customers. You might not need a grocery store. In fact, most of the folks on here are probably running a successful business without one.
Will, thrilled to have you. As Will knows, and you all know, we like to think big at Cast Iron and have big dreams, hopes and dreams for lots of things we can do. And for so many of our customers, our owners, being big means getting into retail. And we're going to talk about that. And I'm remiss if I didn't say that Will is somebody who's been on our list for a long time, that we hoped we could pull something together to get him engaged in talking to us. So I'm going to continue one of the trends from a couple of these things. If you've ever shopped at a Whole Foods and seen the local section or local products or specific products like that from local merchants and providers, put a 1 in the chat, just so that we know. It's one of my favorite things there. So see, look at this. Lots of people will. And Will's the guy who built that entire program to organize, identify, and help get that stuff on the shelves. And now he's on to some pretty incredible things. So Will, thanks for joining us. I'm not going to read your bio, but maybe start by telling us who you are and maybe like a little bit on your journey. Why food? Why retail? Why this?
Yeah, thanks, Mark. Well, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here and to be in front of all of you and speak to you a little bit about my experience and hopefully give you some tips to help you in your business. I have a lot of respect for folks that are entrepreneurs. I want to start by just clarifying that there is a huge team at Whole Foods Market that built the local program and a lot of amazing people to put it together in grassroots. And I had a chance in the last couple of years to do some fun things leading that team, which we'll get to in a minute. But in terms of who I am, just to start with, I currently reside in Austin, Texas with my wife, Christine, 2 teenage kids, 2 dogs, and a cat. My dogs are behind me. Hopefully you wouldn't even know they're there. We just had a nice long walk. So I'm very jealous as they're taking a little bit of a nap while I'm doing this seminar. My wife, I want to give her a shout out, is a small business owner. She is in the space of art and gifts and not necessarily food. But although I've been at Whole Foods Market and have a lot of corporate experience, I understand the trials and tribulations of an entrepreneur, and again, have so much respect for them. In terms of my, career journey and maybe doing a quick intro on the what a bio would cover is I grew up. I was born and raised in Washington, D.C. My parents were born and raised in Washington, D.C. So I'm a Washingtonian kind of from the start and spent my first 30 years of my life there. Still have a lot of ties to that area. And that is where I started at Whole Foods Market. And why Whole Foods Market? Really, it was just to get a job. And I had studied abroad in Spain for my junior year in college. And I was back home trying to know what I want to do in my life. And basically, I needed a job to save some money so that I could travel back to Spain and write, the next great American novel. And so, 26 years later, I don't know, maybe it's time to start thinking about that. I might be able to make that happen. So, but just real quickly, my journey started in DC. I started working in the cheese and the wine department, worked my way up through that department, moved to Chicago, was in Chicago for about 10 years. Where I then, got involved in the entire store on the merchandising, on the purchasing section, went to Seattle, Washington for almost another 10 years. And again, worked throughout the whole store, but, led a team of category merchants through all the categories, but always kind of liked this idea of building brands and working with founders and entrepreneurs, and was really fortunate for the last 2 years of my career at Whole Foods, which ended last December. I was able to lead the local team. And it wasn't at this point that I built the whole program, as Mark said, but thank you for the kudos. But it was really a chance to make it a program more consistent throughout the company. What our focus is to make the local program work for our customers and our suppliers and our team members. And I'll just leave with one of the last things that we did, which I think is relevant for this group, which I was able to help put together, was to create an accelerator program, like an incubation program that we called LEAP. And the goal of that program was to work with companies that were ready to be on our shelves, but would need like an education in terms of like, how do they not only go through all of the steps to get on the shelves, but more importantly, almost is how to stay there. And because we wanted to see the success for entrepreneurs. So that's
Thank you for sharing. We prepped beforehand, but I'm gonna ask you a question that we didn't prep, which is there a moment in your memory where a special moment or memory centered around food that is special?
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple, and I'll tell the beef story.
Okay. I don't know the beef story,
yeah,
but
the beef story.
Remember, this is safe for work.
Yeah. But this was we had what we do team builds with like the folks in the store, and I worked more on the merchandising, the purchasing side, and kind of set up what we sold, how much we sold it for, how we merchandise it, all of that. But we did like team builds, and we took our team of our meat managers to a grass-fed beef producer in Missouri. And it was, this was probably 15, 20 years ago. And grass-fed beef was, catching on then. And it was something that was relatively new to the marketplace. And this whole idea of, animals would just be on grass, that they would stay where they were born and raised, and then basically, processed either on site or near there. And we would buy, the whole animal and work it through our system. And we went and we met with them, and we were out on their farm. And, it was one of those deals where you take like a hay ride and you see the cows and you see where they live and how they live. And it's, a really great environment. And the producers spoke to us about our quality standards. And they said that, we came up with these animal welfare standards. So it's not just what animals eat, but how they were treated. Mm-hmm. And they talked to us that it was kind of a pain to get them up and running. And it was like, oh my goodness, you guys asked for so much. And, we were a big customer, so they did it. And they came back and they said, what is really interesting is that after we implemented these standards, our profits went up. And they went up because their yields were better, because the animals were cared for better, and that, their growth rate was better, and then it was just a better environment for them, and it was just better for their business. So it was at that point where I was like, oh, wow, like, what we're doing here is making a difference, and it's making a difference in the lives of the animals and the lives of our suppliers who raise them. It's making a difference for our customers who are having a different attribute of product. And it just made me feel really great about the work that my team was doing and the small part that we played in that whole food system.
That's really cool. What an opportunity to have an impact beyond just what goes on your plate. So your career started in wine and cheese, which is mine's stuck there. But it's trended towards local and small businesses. Why? What draws you to that, or what's drawn you to that?
It's really the I love food, so and starting wine and cheese definitely helped it. And so you get a lot of variety in that in the local scene. You get new, and you get very I would say differentiated product. Some of it's not so good, but some of it's amazing, and some of it is something like you would never have before. So it's always the newness of it, and then really it's the entrepreneurs. And it's the people behind the products. And there's an authenticity there where you meet people. And a lot of times their story is either like where they came from. They have a different type of recipe. So there's a culture there. There's a learning there. Or it's a family recipe that, again, culturally, but, it's different and it's unique. And they generally are adding something that, you don't necessarily get from a focus group, or you don't necessarily get from like a big company that's done all this research. It's just them. And being able to work with them and help them on their journey. I mean, I know all retailers, like they love it when they see these folks that started in their own kitchen or went through farmers market, and now they're on the shelves because they know how hard it is, and they know the benefits to the entire community for seeing success in these types of businesses.
I believe that Whole Foods market probably cares because we know people who work there and care. But does the market care, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, the market really cares, and so we can even just take away the the supplier stakeholder or the founders, the folks that are looking at that. Even if we would say that, we don't care about these people that make the products, which I will tell you from the folks that I've seen in retail across the board, I think they do care about the people. But even if you take that away, what's really great about some of these products is they are differentiators. And so, you know, from a selfish point of view, Whole Foods, whoever it is, if you have a product that's new, if you have a product you can't get somewhere else, if you have a product that are drawing customers specifically into your store, and you can tell that story and you can connect people on that emotional side to the food, it is a big win. And yes, Mark, they care a lot.
Yeah, and we talked about this earlier today, but people crave connection, and they want to support people they know. They want to support their local community, and they're willing to pay a premium for it, particularly if they feel that connection. Does that show up in the numbers?
Absolutely. I mean, there is, you know, again, I'll go back to authenticity behind it. And if you understand where your dollars are going, I think it does matter to people. And I do think that there is an emotional connection to taste, where if you have two products that taste exactly the same, but if you knew who made it and you like feel that connection and you know it's like close to your house, and maybe that place also has like a restaurant that you've driven by, you've gone to, it's going to taste better. Yeah. So it does show up in the numbers, and people realize that you can pay more for that.
Is it, and they do pay more for it? Like, it's more
Yes.
expensive, the local products, they cost more?
Yeah, I mean, it kind of depends, but
Generally.
generally they will cost more. And generally people will pay for it. And that the thing is, I mean, we can get into this a little bit later, but that only works to a certain extent, you know. And when you get to scaling, and like if you leave your local community, or if you're at a place where it doesn't resonate, it's not, you know, that often does not work then.
Right, it's got to be authentic, it's got to be real. If you scale past it, you're at the risk of, you know, you're famous Amos. Nobody really knows who that guy is anymore, right?
Exactly. And if you're in a part of the country where it doesn't resonate, either your flavors or your name or something, then it's going to be, I like to say it's harder to push that rock uphill. Not impossible, but you know, you have to have some things in place to do it.
Yeah, so the folks in the audience today in this beautiful room, I mean, it's amazing. The air conditioning is a little strong. Hopefully nobody's too cold, but are, you know, they are largely solopreneurs, thinking about how to run successful businesses. Many of them are running incredibly successful businesses, and they're competing with national brands. They're competing with other local brands, like in a rapidly changing economy. Like, I mean, we didn't spend a lot of time talking about macro economic trends and interest rates, but like, what's happening in local, what's happening in retail, like tell us what you know about what we should know about the retail environment today.
I think to your point, it's changing, and it's always changing, and it feels like the acceleration is always accelerating. You know, so it's like, but there were some things that I think for your audience that I'd like to call out. The pandemic definitely changed the way that people shop. I think everybody on this call probably knows that, but from a retailer's point of view, a few things that I would call out are people are used to now buying on the internet in ways that they weren't before with food. I mean, obviously everybody's been buying on the internet for years, but now I think people are a lot more comfortable with buying food. And then the other thing that happened that's big is that I would say that the supply chain definitely, like, there was shock waves in the supply chain that happened not only with the pandemic, but then with inflation, where, you know, I spent a lot of my career trying to drive costs out of the supply chain. And a lot of ways that you can do that is to become more efficient, is to consolidate, is to get the best cost through volume. And that's all well and good, and that works until your supplier can't, fill your order. And then you need to go to somebody else who you might have consolidated. So, you know, I would say that people now understand more, having a little more robust, a little more options, a plan A, a plan B, a plan C in their supply chain is a good thing. And even if that costs a little bit more. So I think for the folks on this call, know that, like, your ability to, like, meet your customers where they are, and that can now be online. It can be direct to consumers. You might not need a grocery store. In fact, most of the folks on here are probably running a successful business without one, and that's good. And you can grow it that way. And know that, like, if you can deliver and you can be in stock, so this would be more for, like, if you get on the shelves and you can have your product there, you know, learning from the pandemic, in stock position is very, very important. And a lot of local brands actually were able to get onto the shelves because some of the bigger brands couldn't,
Got it.
couldn't
So
hit
with
all of their doors.
with the costs of everything going up, and everything is more expensive. Last week, every newspaper or website or news source was talking about the price of eggs. Our customers, our audience has been talking about eggs for a year.
Yeah.
What do you do about that?
Yeah. I mean, this goes back then again to having those relationships. And I think there was something that I heard from the founder of Patagonia, where they only worked with suppliers where like they were either the number one supplier or they were really important to them. So like that was their business model, and it wasn't as much based on cost. So I think those deep relationships up and down your supply chain are really important. And those are the type of people that you're going to partner with. And yeah, when their costs go up, they're going to raise their cost to you, and you're going to have to pass it along, and you're going to have to like make that work. And that's always a balance. And that's a hard dance to do, to understand, when does my price get too high that somebody wants it? But when you have those long-term relationships, the people that trust you, and this isn't about like what you're going to buy for next week or next month, but for the next year, then you can have a partnership that to help to mitigate some of those shocks to the cost system.
Yeah. How do you, where in the life cycle, what is the profile of somebody's business that might be ready to think about retail?
Yeah. So
we'll ask whether they should or shouldn't, but
yeah, it's somewhere where you can scale it, where you have your production to a point where you're probably going to need to go outside of like your home. You're going to, need to have a partner, not only for volume and to be able to handle, doing more business, but also from a food safety and a compliance point of view. If you can find, some place that can help with that manufacturing, you don't have to own it. You could build it yourself. That's a lot of capital. Or you could just work with, a lot of the different facilities that have multiple clients out there. That is helpful. It's somebody that has a relatively large amount of capital or access to capital so that they can do a large run and some initial orders, because you often you don't get paid right away. That's the other thing is, there's a capital outlay in a lot of different areas. Somebody that has their packaging sorted out. There are some situations where you won't need packaging, but mostly when you're in a retail store, you're going to need some level of packaging. So you have to have that sorted out. And you just I think for a lot of founders in small companies, a lot of it is just that time. Yeah. And just understanding who's going to do this work and having a plan for that. And how do you manage that side of it? Because there's a lot of extra steps that go into it.
Yeah. So just to remind everybody, please put your questions into the Q&A. We'll be asking Will some questions. There's some there I see already lining up. We'll get to them. Will, I'm starting to sense maybe a tone of, gosh, it's really hard. Be careful. Maybe retail's not the golden goose that we might think it is. Is retail right? Who's retail right for and who's it not right for?
Yeah, I mean, it's absolutely right for somebody that that can do a consistent product. Like I said, somebody that has the access to time and to money, who can take the risk, who can meet the demands of the retailer, which is, they want their orders, they want them consistent, they want them at a certain time.
There's certain volume, what's a minimum volume?
I mean, something to think about, per store, if you're not doing a case or so, whatever your case is, a week. I mean, it kind of depends on the category, but if we're talking about baked goods, something like cookies or something like that, those turn quick. So, you got to look at a store, and if you're not selling I don't know, a couple cases a week at a store, you're probably not there, and you got to multiply that out by the store. So again, it will depend on the category and the price.
Is there a question that you always ask right away when someone says, "Oh, I think I should be on the shelves"?
I guess I ask them if for me, it's the capital. Do you have money set aside to make it happen? And so if you have access to capital, and that, you can afford to invest in your business, and like I said, not get paid for a bit, know that you might, your margins are going to be compressed. And then if you have a team in place, if you have those couple things and you have a great product, you can certainly make it happen. But you got it. You also got to balance, Mark, you might be better off with just expanding the current model that you have, and you might be more profitable and happier kind
Right.
of in that sense, because, things can go really wrong.
Yeah,
On the retail
I'll get
side.
to that. We'll come back to getting really wrong.
Yeah.
There's a question about a specific brand, Rustic Bakery. I figured I'd ask it. I don't know if I've asked Will about a bunch of brands that I know from my local stores, and I think Will is being modest. He was way up on the food chain, as it were, so probably didn't know every local brand, but maybe use a case study of somebody who came in who did really well. And by the way, if you do know Rustic Bakery, feel free to use them, but
Yeah,
who's somebody you
I'm
saw
not,
that you're proud of?
yeah, I'm not familiar with Rustic Bakery, but I'll talk about a brand that, came in as a local small and emerging supplier, and did really well. And I was really proud of the work that I did with them. If you've seen me, well, it's funny, I talk publicly about this company a lot. And that is a nut butter company from Portland, Oregon, that really, strong presence in the community, good quality ingredients. And I think it starts with, first and foremost, the product is amazing. Like, the product tastes really good. And Mark, to your point earlier about, retails and cost, it is a premium product. It is, a top end of the, food scale product in the category, but it tastes better than other nut butters. So it's worth it. And so, like, that scale of smaller production shows in the flavor, and it shows in the taste. And we had a program at Whole Foods Market where we did a supplier of the year for the local and emerging brands in each of the regions. And we chose it when I was in the Pacific Northwest down in Seattle as our supplier of the year. And I knew a little bit about the company, but as I got to know the founders and understood their mission better, it made me even prouder to be able to tell their story and to work with them, because they have a very strong mission of giving folks, specifically women, a second chance in terms of employment. And so they hire folks that normally, wouldn't be at the top of the list of folks that you would hire. But they bring them in, they train them up, and they just have such an amazing, loyal workforce of people that appreciate the opportunity and are committed to the mission. And so it's like, when you have this combination of a great tasting product, you have a great mission and a story that's giving back to the community, and a strong local presence. Those are some of the dynamic things that can really accelerate a company. And as a retailer, you want to support them. You want to be associated with them. You want to tell their story, and you want to help them grow throughout your company.
How do you make that story come to life? Because you keep talking about you're spending more time talking about the story and the brand and the relationship with the creator, which I totally agree with. You said that obviously it tastes delicious, but who, maybe, and use an example maybe of those guys or somebody else you remember who really did a great job bringing that story to life at scale?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it is, it's a partnership. So the retailer will have, a lot of retailers, like, you want to tell these stories. You want to, connect, like we've been talking about, to the emotions of the customers shopping at your store, and bring them into your store and make them feel good about the products that they're getting at your store. And hopefully they can only get at your store, or they associate with your store. And so you have different programs where you have in-store signage. A lot of retailers will do storytelling emails, a lot of online things. And then, from a supplier point of view, use your social media, and you don't, I don't think you even need to hire big companies to do this for you, but just tell your story, just talk about what you do. And it like, these platforms now make it so easy to pop up a picture and make it look pretty, and just tell about like what you're doing. And I know, like, that's another time, that's another time constraint. It's more work, but when you have this opportunity to build it on your own, I think that would be the other thing that I would say is, don't trust that the retailer is just going to, tell the story to your customers. You need to stay connected to your customers and use whatever you can to talk about what you're doing, and to help drive them into the retailers. Retailers love that.
Yeah, it feels like, I mean, I think our customers here have a multiple goals, dreams, avenues, and ways to get to, maybe the promised land or something. And I would certainly have imagined getting on the shelves at Whole Foods would be, or Albertsons, or what have you, could be the answer. But gosh, it sounds hard. Like, what do you have to do to, like, once you get on this, like, you you're not done, right? Doesn't
No,
sound
that's
like
just
you're done.
that's just the beginning part. I mean, I think you have to do a lot of the same things that you would do like currently. You know, you take advantage of promotional opportunities. So like you have to put your product on sale because that is a big customer, you know, like purchasing thing is that you see it's on sale. I mean, like, oh, it's on sale. Let me try that. So and you have to invest in that. So you have to lower your cost to do that. Any chance you have to demo, and you know, different retailers have different programs. You know, you have to look at that and get in there and talk to the customers about it. And you know, you have to constantly be looking at what the marketplace is doing, and you might need to innovate and do new flavors. And then again with that, you should be careful though, because you don't want to start doing too many things that you lose focus on the things that made you great. So yeah, there's a lot of help out there. There's a lot of money that you can spend on help that, you know, sometimes pays you back, sometimes doesn't.
You're stressing me out, Will.
Yeah, I don't mean to stress you out.
No.
I just like, you know, I want you to be prepared for it and to understand that there are lots of people have done it. And I find that the people that succeed really kind of stay true to what they are, build that brand, have that authenticity, work with good people. So like the people that can help you, get to know them, understand what they'll do for you, make sure that you're an important part of their business. And, you know, you can do it, you can succeed, but it's not the only way, you know, and there's lots of different ways to succeed.
So, I mean, that's great business advice and life advice, period, right? So much of what we've heard today is about the energy you bring, the belief in yourself, the clarity of focus of who your customer is, where your customer is. Your customer might not be at retail, might not be shopping in national retail. There's lots of different, I know Lisa Gobb was just on the last one, and I know she sells in a local shop. And that's different, I'm sure, for lots of different reasons. Things go wrong, you said. What goes wrong?
Oh, okay. Well, I mean, again, Mark, I feel like I'm already stressing you out, but
I know.
the
Is it hot in here
things
now?
I mean, like the big picture is like, when I see things go wrong, it's generally because somebody's grown too quickly. And they, I've seen companies, like the worst thing that's happened to them is they got into all of the Whole Foods Market stores. And, you know, like, so they lose track of a couple of things can happen. One is that they're not ready to scale their production. And so like, it is like when you need to have that production dialed in, it needs to be ready when the retailer wants it. It needs to be, you know, like consistent quality. If something goes wrong on the launch, that can set you back a lot. And from a retailer's point of view, a retailer puts a lot of resources into bringing a new product onto the shelf. So there's costs that the retail incurs. And when the timing gets messed up, it is painful. It's painful for you, of course, as a supplier, but also for the retailer. So know that. So I've seen companies like lose their opportunity to get like hit the production well. And so they, you know, they don't get into all the stores that they expected to get into. It's hard to go back and get in. And I've seen people that like kind of lose sight of this idea that like you might be big in your home city because people know you, but once you're, you know, 3 states away or the other side of the country, people don't know you. And that's, again, going back to investing into teams that can help get the word out and help to build your brand outside of where you are. So people who just think like, oh, I'm in Whole Foods, but they might spend all their money on production to get their stuff out there, which I get it, is great. But then the retailer is going to ask you to promote, you know, and then the distributor might not pay you right away. And so it's just like, again, that's why I was asked, do you have capital? And I've just seen like companies that are really good and successful in a small area, they get bigger and they're not ready for it. And it almost like it kind of even can hurt their business even in that localized area where they start.
Got it. Well, so now you're onto a new career, basically telling people what to do as a consultant and other things in CPG space. Knowing the audience in the room today, what are some trends or things you think that they should be aware of?
Yeah, I think that just the transparency in ingredients has always been a big deal, but where you can have cleaner ingredients, and by cleaner, I'd say less. And, you know, I'm coming from like the Whole Foods Market perspective of that was kind of what, you know, kind of the quality standards point to it. I do think that more and more consumers really want to know about their food and where it comes from and where the ingredients are. A huge trend is regenerative agriculture. And that can be a tricky one because there's not a really great standard for that. So you're going to have to you're going to have to understand soil health. And so, like, for example, if you are, if you're a baker and you're using, flour, is it regenerative? And you'd have to ask your suppliers, and you'd have to ask like a step later, like, so, but what does that mean to you? And how is the soil being tracked, and how is the soil being measured?
Sounds like that Portlandia skit. Have you seen that Portlandia skit?
Yeah, it does. Yeah, exactly. Like, what was the chicken's hobbies and what were their parents like? And so it does get like it can get to a little bit of like, even as like consumers and retailers, you can throw your hands up and be like, it's too much. But if you can talk to about, again, what your sourcing is, like, I think it's important to people. Is it organic? Again, regenerative is big. Other trends that are out there, everyone knows that like the keto diet has been a trend that's out there. But I think that, these things oscillate, but it always comes back to quality. And so like, I don't ever see the point where people aren't going to want cookies. And like, there's always going to be a place where a really, really delicious, product is going to find a home,
Yeah, in my belly.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the other thing that I would say is, like different flavors. You see a lot of like West Africa has been something that's, popped up in the last couple of years. But again, Mark, I think, you should play with it, understand what it's at, but like know your customers and like, be true and authentic to the recipes that you have. But, go out, you can go out and see what's hot and play with it a little bit too.
Yeah. Thanks. We're almost at time here. I'm getting a bunch of questions on the LEAP program, and I know you're not a Whole Foods market anymore, but is LEAP still around, and how do people learn about it, and what do they need to know?
So there's like, you can Google and look for there's a portal for potential suppliers at Whole Foods Market, and when you get on there, it can tell you how to apply for LEAP. And that is a really big piece of advice that I would give to folks that are looking to make that next step. And by all means, of course, I love the Whole Foods Market program that I helped put together. And I know the people that are there running it are amazing, and they're, doing great work. And there's other programs out there.
What are they looking for? And specifically about LEAP, but also more generally, what are these accelerator programs looking for?
So, I mean, I can't speak for exactly what all the other accelerator programs are looking for, but I just say, like, get to know all the ones that are out there. Some of them are tied to retailers. Like Chobani has one that has a lot of accolades. Some of them aren't even tied to retailers. They're just different forums and different ways to grow your brand. I'm getting involved with one based in Austin called SKU. So there's all these different like ways of doing it. But going back to more specifically for what, at Whole Foods, what LEAP is looking for is looking for folks that are at a certain point, like we talked about, where they would be close to being ready to get into retail. So like, if you're just baking cookies in your house and selling to your neighbors and stuff, like, that's awesome. Like I don't know that you would be ready to get into the program. So somebody that maybe is at the farmer's market, they have packaging, and they have a great product, so it's somebody that's at a certain stage that's close, but is not in retail yet. Okay, but I would say just apply,
Well, my last question, and then we're going to be at time, is because we absolutely have people on this call who have packaging, who are producing in a commercial kitchen. Wonderful. And at volume that is much higher than you or I could imagine. Well, awesome. Actually, if not us, who would imagine? But you said capital. You need money. How much? Like, how much is enough? How should someone do that math or even think about it? You're not going to give a number, but like,
again, it depends on the category, and it kind of depends on where you're at. But you're going to need a large initial run, and it just kind of depends on what your scale is. If you're starting out and like you want to get into Whole Foods Market LEAP, and you already have like what you just said, you probably won't need too much more. If you're going to start small and you're going to go into a limited amount of doors. If you're going to like go into like any chain, whether it's Whole Foods or not, where you're looking at like 400 or 500 stores, that's where you might need to look at like, ooh, you're looking at potentially 7 figures and maybe needing some help.
Mhm.
To deal with everything that's going to go on that. So I would say that, if you are a brand that is already established and have those things that are set up, apply for a program like LEAP. And, you can through the education of it, you can learn how much you'll need for your category. But if like you twist my arm and you said how much, I would say if you had like a $300,000 kind of base, and that, I hope that number doesn't sound super crazy. I think that's like a good padding to get started and, on kind of a smaller level in a fixed amount of stores. And by fixed amount would be, like a 10 to 15 kind of store.
Okay, cool. This is really my last question. Because we might have people applying to the LEAP program. What's one tip to make their application stand out?
Be authentic. I mean, just be you. And that's because then you don't have to fake it. I mean, I know that seems really like basic, but like be you is the most important thing. And like looking to authentically tell your story is incredible. I mean, you have to have a clean ingredient deck, and by clean, like no preservatives. So like the Whole Foods Market quality standard. So I'd hate to see somebody get, dinged because of something like that.
Got it.
Yeah, be authentic. And know your sourcing, because that is a big deal. Where do you get your,
Okay, so
where do
be
you
authentic, know your sourcing, no artificial.
and be delicious.
And be delayed. Well, that goes without saying.
Yeah.
Will, this has been a pleasure. I'm seeing background chatter on how thoughtful and helpful this conversation has been. Can't thank you enough. Will, are you on social? Can we give you a follow somewhere? Or
Yeah, I mean, you can find me on Instagram. I'm not Instagram, sorry. I'm actually not good on Instagram. LinkedIn.
LinkedIn. Okay,
Yeah.
find Will on LinkedIn if you want to hit him up. I can't thank you enough.